Thank you. I guess the first thing I'll tell you about is how I thought about making Passage and how it evolved to a point where I'm being told I'm not talking loud enough. Raise your hand if you can't hear me. My granddaughter can't hear me. It all started with just scribbling. And I had nothing in mind. I just was in my studio, kind of in a meditative state, nothing specific in mind, and kept scribbling and scribbling. And somehow, within that scribble, a shape emerged that somehow seemed meaningful. I can't say how it was meaningful, it just felt meaningful. So I isolated it, drew it a little bit bigger, made it look like a finished drawing, and then is it on? And then some of them I decided to build. Of course, the drawings were two-dimensional, and I had to translate it to 3 dimensions. And my husband, wonderful engineer, taught me how to make a structure. There he is. A structure so that they would stand up, because I really had a master's degree in painting and did not really know how to build a sculpture. So the sculpture is made of steel rods that I bent and welded together. You can't see them, they're inside. Over that, I put fencing, and onto the fencing, I weaved this aluminum wire, which I cut into lengths, wound them around different diameter dowels, and had these curlicues that I could put on overlapping so that it looked like a scribble in space. And I like the fact that it's translucent. It's also stuffed with chicken wire, so it looks like the scribble goes all the way through, but in fact the inside is just chicken wire. It differs from many outdoor sculptures because many of them are made with steel or bronze, cast in bronze, or carved out of marble, and mine are simply wire. And with a needle nose plier, I attached each piece. And what I can say about it is you can liken it to a painting that's very large, that's painted with a size 0 brush. I like doing this because it allows me to go over every little inch of it and have it look just the way I want. And you see that some of the curlicues are bigger and some of them are smaller. So then came the idea of, well, what should I call it? And I was thinking, what have I been thinking about all this time while I've been working on it? And I thought, what I've really been thinking about is the passage from one stage of life to the next, from infancy to childhood, from childhood to adolescence, from adolescence to adulthood, and probably the hardest one, from adulthood to old age, knowing what comes after that. And so I made the passage so that it looks like it'll be a little hard to get through it, because it's very narrow in part of it. And so that's how it came to be. And I also want to tell you a little bit about the process of getting it here. It started when Dina Upton called me and said she'd like to have a studio visit with other members of the Arts Committee, and she did. And we looked at all my indoor sculptures and all my outdoor sculptures, and they selected the one that they thought they wanted to have installed. And then we had meetings. Many meetings, many studio visits. The spot was selected, and Kathie Bennewitz, who was phenomenal. She knew everything that would be required to get this accomplished, and she guided me through all of it, starting with the paperwork, which was a documentation that I had to provide so it could be given to an appraiser, so it could be appraised for value and then given to the insurance company who would know how much to insure it for. A new vendor application, a W-9 form, an invoice, an automatic deposit form. And then we got started. She arranged a coordinated meetings where everybody came to my house and saw it. We had it installed outside in the front yard. Jeff dug around it so that everybody could see that it's mounted on railroad ties. And the railroad ties are buried. The idea was to have it look like it's just standing here. But then we were coordinating with the Parks Department. Let's see here, I have all the names of everyone who came. Mike West came to the meeting. Mark Bolduck, who is the mason, came, and he decided that there should be cement posts covered by a cement slab. And they had to be, we told them, 5 inches below the ground surface so that they wouldn't show. And then the railroad ties are attached to the cement with bolts. Well, it was standing to the side here, and he had straps put around the railroad ties, and his helpers were there, and there it was dangling up in the air, waiting to be put in place. And Jeff said out loud exactly what was on my mind, which was, I sure hope this doesn't end up in the river. But they finally maneuvered it so that it was right in the right spot, lowered it down, and the bolts that were in the cement came up through the railroad tie. And then Mark said to me, well, you wanted pebbles around it, so I think you have to come with me to Galt and pick them out. Well, Galt is a building supply place for anybody who doesn't live here. And behind the building of Galt is this vast area that is around the periphery of it, has these huge areas of pebbles. Every kind of pebble, from the smallest little pebble up to big rocks. And there we were amidst the trucks that were coming in and out. It was Kathie and Jeff and Mike and Mark. And I picked out the pebbles. And the next thing I knew, I came back and I had requested that they were surrounding the sculpture. And so now it looks like it's just sitting here, but you know that the attachments go down several feet. Well, yeah. So that's all, and I want to just thank everybody involved. Kathie and let's see, Tom Burson, who transported it from my house to here, and Mark Bolduck, who was the mason, who worked very well with us, and Jennifer Fava, who's the head of Parks and Rec, who had to okay it, and of course Jennifer Tucker, who you heard speak earlier. So it took a village. And lastly, I just want to read a quote from Sculpture Magazine. One of the recent issues of Sculpture Magazine had a whole section on public sculpture. And this was the introductory few sentences. It said, public artworks celebrate their community. They function as a gathering point, landmark, and a way to beautify space. Sited in spots where we live and interact, public art is open to all. It encourages the most diverse of audiences because it erects no barriers to engagement, which I think is a terrific description and tells you why it's different from seeing art in a museum or a gallery. It's just out here where people go fishing and people play catch and people jog on the path and people boat on the river. And so I am very honored to be part of this whole program to place art all around Westport so that people identify it with a town of artists, which it has been since its very beginning. And I'm honored to be one of the first pieces put in.